brought to you by LaglessGG. Get 35% off your first purchase by using code CygnusMC or click the link below. Minecraft hosting. Is there any space out there that's even more crowded than this one? With new hosts popping up as fast as the last one got shut down, especially in the summer when little Timmy gets a little bit of time on their hands and decides to rent out a Contabo server as his summer job, probably adding the CEO title to their Discord bio and stealing his dad's suit to take a cool profile picture. But how can you spot these bad deals as someone who just wants to host a server with some friends? Who cares if 50% of the RAM that was promised is actually going into swap? It's only $4 a pop for a 4GB server. In all seriousness, it is my goal today that you, as a total newbie, can spot a good deal with a good host from a mile away or smell a bad one from a kilometer. At the end, we'll also talk about something that we really need to discuss as a community, as I've noticed that a bad trend is happening and I am afraid that I somewhat contributed to that bad trend. But without further introing, insert subscribe text here and let's get going. First up, let's discuss what we clarify as a bad deal. In this case, it is paying way too much for way too little. Something that you don't need or don't want or can't fully use. And while there are factors like support and ease of use that are not things you can easily see when buying a server, don't you worry, there will be a time where I'll be testing people's support. But for now, let's focus on some hard factors in here. Let's start off with pricing. There are a few things hosts tend to base their prices on, but not all of them are as honest as they might seem. For example, player slots. Not only is this an arbitrary value you can literally change in the config without any effort if they didn't lock it down, there is no real way to correlate how much RAM can support the amount of players, especially when mods enter the scene, because then it goes all over the place. The other and more honest pricing model is RAM, which is a far better indication of what you get for your money, for a very simple reason. And the reason these shady hosts go for player slots is very easily described. Say you go for a server that offers you 20 slots and 2GB of RAM for €4 a month. That's 5 players per euro spent. That's great value, right? Well, let's flip it around. It's half a gig of RAM per euro you spent. That's insanely bad. And usually this is why hosts choose to market on slots instead of RAM. Aside from that, you want to look into some other things. For example, are they offering backups? Are they transparent about their hardware, their CPU choice? Are they using modern hardware or some last generation stuff? And do you have to pay extra for greater hardware? Are all good indications of a host either trying to be transparent or just shoehorning you onto a node. Oh, and speaking of paying extra, let's talk about upsells. If you don't know, an upsell is everything sold beyond the base hosting service and everything that's shoved to you while ordering a server. You want a dedicated IP? That's $5, bucko. Oh, what's that? You want DDoS protection for your small-time friends-only server? $4 a month, please. Oh, what's that? You want to pay us money for us to manage your server instead of us providing the tools to learn yourself? Sure, buddy. That's $20, please. Now, again, these all have their purposes in some occasions, right? The dedicated IP means that you can just put a domain to that server without a port needing to be there. That's that little double point 25565 or whatever it is. The managed server experience is for those who have money to spare but no time left to figure stuff out. The DDoS, I just can't really justify DDoS charge on anything else unless you need it. Now, I actually asked Pebble host CEO why there is a $4 charge on their DDoS protection, and apparently they spend $250 a month on DDoS mitigation. My sponsor Lagless even goes up to $500 a month. And don't you worry, I'll deep dive into DDoS mitigation in the future somewhere. Same point for extra backups or databases. Why are these not just free inclusions? One extra backup or one extra database isn't going to stall your node. There are other hosts that do give you these things for free. Same with DDoS. DDoS mitigation is included in every server over at Ultra servers. Even Lagless does it, but some require you to pay for it. It's a little bit iffy in my opinion, but I understand why some hosts don't give it out for free. And I will take the time right now to please get it through your skull that you don't need 12 gigabytes of RAM to host 10 players, right? You only need about 6 gigabytes of RAM for most modded servers. Because if you start out with a 2 gigabyte server, you add 4 gigabytes to that, that's gonna perform way better. But if you add 4 gigabytes to the 6 gigabyte server, you're gonna get diminishing returns. It's not gonna go as well as when you added the first 4 gigabytes. You don't need 12 gigabytes of RAM to host a Minecraft server. 6 to 8 can go a really long way. You just need to do some simple things, like loading your chunks beforehand, lowering the render distance, and using the chunky plugin. Right? That's just some simple things that doesn't take too much knowledge or time. You should be doing this before you play. Start with a small plan, maybe 2 to 4 gigabytes. Look for hosts that tell you how much cores you get and what the CPU cores are linked to, right? Is it a 99100X? Is it a 9950X? Those are really good. And if you need more, just upgrade later. There's no reason for you to spend 20 bucks for something that you might not utilize fully. Just start with a small plan of like 8 bucks or 4 bucks and upgrade later. Everybody has an upgrade scheme, right? But there's some things that money won't buy you in this space, and that is host reliability. Now, I said it's not really possible to gauge post-purchase support and uptime and overall performance in general, but we kind of can see in some way how the host performs. For support, all we need to do is type their name into Google and see if we can find any reports on Reddit or Trustpilot. On Trustpilot, just filter out the 5-star reviews and look for bad ones, because they're usually going to bot these things. Not every host does, I'm not going to say that, but more shady hosts tend to flood this with positive reviews like we've seen on Godlike Hosting. Ask yourself a very simple question though. Could the reviewer have done this by accident? How much of the reviews are actually bad? On Reddit, the same applies. Don't just read the post of the person having the issues. Read the comments, see if someone with knowledge in the space of what's being discussed provides any sort of solution that pointed out that the user was in fault. These are some questions that you need to ask yourself when you want to go with a reliable host. For reliability itself, you might want to look onto uptime sites like this one from Lagless, where it shows the uptime, maintenance, and other stuff you might want to know. Anything below 95% uptime is a kinda bit suspicious. Keep in mind that some shady hosts will use a software that allows them to remove any maintenance and still get that 100% uptime. For performance, the only real gauge you have is finding out what CPU they use and how overutilized their nodes are. And if they display it, perfect, you immediately know what performance to expect. Anything like a Ryzen 9 99100 or a 9950X are top of the line at the moment and perform the best. High-class epics like the one used by Moderant are also mostly fine for most servers. Anything running anything older than an i9 9900 is simply not worth much. There's a reason why certain hosts sell their services for $1 a gigabyte of RAM, and it's because of that CPU. If you find any lower grade CPUs for a good deal, you might want to check out what the business is all about. Is it actually a registered business? Does it have staff that is actually of age? Do they actually have a website, or did they approach you via Discord? These are all bare minimum in deciding if a host is worth your money. But that brings me to a final point in talking about summer hosts. I've used the term myself over and over again, but the reality is that hosting isn't a quick and easy way to make money. It's an easy way to get potentially in trouble. You need to remember that you're handling user data, and any mishandling of that data, in Europe at least, will leave you open for a lawsuit. Though there are people that do this as a hobby. People like Andy over here at Minestone Hosting. He's a system administrator in his day job and had a fully, quote, professional hosting company at one point, but he has turned it into a private side gig as a hobby hosting provider. He doesn't promote his services anywhere. People just come up to him and ask him to host anything for exchange for payment. He doesn't have a website or anything in that manner, but does that make him a summer host? It's a trend that I was talking about in the beginning. Not every hobbyist that earns a little bit of cash this way is a summer host. If the hoster knows what he's doing, handles data with care, doesn't overcharge his customers, and doesn't just promote his services to everyone they will see, is that still a summer host? Remember that this is a really cool hobby, and some of us just want to have a good time while paying off for our rentals. But with that being said, I was Lunar, you were very awesome, and I will see you next time. All right, thank you all for being here. Thank you to my YouTube Pebbles for joining the YouTube membership program. Just $1 a month gets you early access. This one's probably not going to be early access. I'm a little bit late, but you get early access. Patrons, you get the same thing. You also get access to the fully 25 full-length interviews with so many people in the modding space and people outside the modding space. We got people from X4. We got the developer of Thrive. All that kind of shit is in the Patreon. Only $1 a month. You can become a patron. And yeah, that's it, basically. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm gonna start editing because I'm already late. But I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.